Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
I'm a 23-year-old woman and I've been married to my wonderful husband, 23, for about a year now. I own a couple of small businesses along with my husband, so needless to say, we earn very well and live a great lifestyle. However, this wasn't always the case. My mom divorced my dad when I was just 6 years of age to go live with her married boss. They both left their partners and turned our lives upside down for their benefit. My mom's affair partner brought 2 kids along with him, and from the very start, our relationship was rocky. But as they grew older, being poisoned by the words of their mom, they projected their anger for my mom onto me and often excluded me, picked on me, and being in the same high school, bullied me. Things weren't much different with my mom and stepdad. They tried their best to ignore me and play happy family with their 2 sons. My mother would especially make sure to make it known that I wasn't welcome here. Whenever I brought this up to her, she would explain to me how I needed to adjust so the younger me would just take it. The only time I felt like I belonged somewhere was with my dad. He had me for the weekends. Unfortunately, even if I wanted to stay for longer, I could not because my dad had to work multiple jobs to get back on his feet, as my mom had left him high and dry during the divorce. So when I turned 15 and my dad's business took off, he asked me if I wanted to live with him for half the week, which I was more than ready for. So from ages 15 to 18, I started being less and less at my mom's house and more at my dad's for obvious reasons. Whenever I visited my mom's place, the behavior of my step-siblings improved slightly. They would just ignore me rather than bullying me, which was more than enough for me at that time. This was probably because they now got spoiled by my mom and their dad and saw less of me. By the time I went off to undergrad school, my contact had become limited with mom and her family. Busy playing happy family, she did not bother contacting me, and neither did I. The contact completely shut during my college years, except for a few obligatory birthday and Christmas wishes, and that's how it stayed after my graduation as well, till a point that they weren't aware of my relationship, my engagement, nor were they invited to my courthouse wedding. So it was interesting to know that my stepbrother, now 22, contacted me inquiring about my life. At first, the tone of the conversation was very pleasant from his end, but as I continued to show hesitation, he probably figured I wasn't interested in speaking. Then he decided to get straight to the point and unravel his true intentions. He started talking about how my mom and his parents were all struggling with finance as the pandemic affected their work fields, so they had to take money from his and his siblings' college fund, which he needed to pursue his post-grad education. I was least interested to hear how things were going for him, so I told him how I did not owe him any of my money. We were barely in contact, and how he must have a lot of nerve to contact me for money after so many years of not caring what happened to me. He said he knows I have a lot of money, as he's seen pictures of my house, my car, and the vacations I go on with my husband on social media, and how this is the very least I owe him to compensate for all that house wrecker my mom had been. This was a comment that made me hang up the call, before I would have started saying things out of anger. Although my husband, dad, and my mother-in-law agree with my response. However, talking to my friends made me feel conflicted. They told me that maybe I should have been more patient with him. The pandemic has truly messed up the lives of many people, especially students, and that I should definitely help him even if it's just a little. Which is true. I can probably help both of my siblings with their education, but what his entitlement makes me not want to? Putting me in a conflicting situation. After reading all of your comments, I feel pretty reassured in my decision. But unfortunately, the entitlement does not end here. Honestly, I did not think that the entitlement of my stepbrother would steep so low. After a couple of days of talking to my brother, I received a call from an unknown number. I knew it wasn't my stepbrother's because I'd blocked it. So I decided to pick it up, and to my surprise, it was my mom. Hearing her voice after so many years felt enraging because I knew exactly why she called me, for her personal greed. She barely asked for my well-being and started off the call on a very sour tone, and it just kept on getting worse. She went on about how she knew I forgot about my family because my father and I started to live comfortably, and how it only got worse because I started earning too. She claimed I learnt my selfishness from my dad, which was pretty ironic coming from her. But anyways, I did not say much throughout the call because I knew talking to her was talking to a wall. She is dense, and nothing will get through to her. The lack of response led her to hang up eventually. Then the family messages started flowing in, starting off with my aunt from my mom's side, who I hadn't spoken to for years, messaging me, trying to berate me, then a couple of my cousins and even my stepdad's ex-wife. All these people I hadn't talked to in years. It was pretty saddening to see how much these people went out of their way to dictate me instead of reflecting on their wrongdoings. Things went out of hand today. I was aware that these people were entitled, greedy, selfish, and outright toxic, but I did not know that their toxicity could extend to this level. I'm not sure how this happened, but I'm pretty shaken up right now. I've been working from home Monday to Wednesday since lockdown restrictions eased, and today just felt like a regular day of following the same routine. This feeling went away as I answered the knock on my door to see my mom, stepbrothers, and stepdad. It took me a moment to realize it was them, and in pure panic, I just shut the door. My first thought was, how did they get my address? Because I know that although I post pictures of my home on social media once in a while, I did not believe that it would be this easy for them to get a hold of my address since I live hours away from them. Them trying to visit and talk to me wasn't just it. Once I shut the door, they wouldn't stop knocking on it until I threatened to call the cops, at which point they finally took a step back. Right after they left, I called my husband to stay at a friend's place for a day or two while I left to live with my dad, and it's where I'm typing this update right now. I do not feel safe to be in my own home currently because I don't know who they might send to convince me to give them money tomorrow. Thankfully, I have the footage of the entire exchange, and I'm going to make sure to see if I have any basis to get a restraining order against them because this situation is really getting out of hand. Get a restraining order, OP. What an entitled family. I can't believe they had the audacity to trespass OP's property even after they were asked to leave. You should also reconsider your friendship if they believe you should help the people who gave you childhood trauma. The aunt and cousins can also help the poor family themselves if they're so concerned. The entitlement is unbelievable. How do these people expect help when they can't even talk to OP politely? There wasn't even a mention of apology by the siblings or the parents for everything they put OP through. Also, the stepbrother is 22. I'm sure he could pay his own education, like many of us do. He needs to get a job instead of harassing OP.
Next story.
Back in December, my favorite aunt passed away. Even though she was ostracized from my conservative family half my life for being openly queer, she was my role model and best friend. Tam was a doctor, and back in the AIDS epidemic, she solely worked on the victims everyone was too afraid to work with. She was a crazy cat lady, rock and roll legend, a gamer, and a puzzle fanatic. When she passed, I was asked to make a slideshow and playlist of all her favorite songs for her memorial. I was given a week to do this, and it literally tore the family apart. Long story short, I created a 250-pic slideshow and 35 song playlists to go with it, and given over 2,000 pictures to go through. It apparently wasn't good enough, and my grandma and 2 aunts verbally attacked me and my sisters for refusing to change the slideshow 2 days before the service. The family were divided on the matter. Most took my side, but some took up my aunt's, saying that I was being unreasonable and not giving my grandma and aunts what they wanted, and my Aunt Tam, bless her, would be disappointed in me. We got death threats from that side of the family, and my grandma disinvited everyone but the aunts to the service. The day before the service, I went to Tam's house to collect some of her belongings. I talked to my grandma and apologized for not doing more. My two aunts locked me in Tam's room and grabbed my wrist and told me how awful I was. I was verbally berated. They locked the door and threatened to ruin me if I told anyone what they were doing. I fawned. I told them what they wanted to hear. 2 hours later, they released me, and I basically told my grandma everything was my fault and I was the instigator. I got everyone invited back to the service, but it ruined my relationship with my aunts. I've avoided them since. They're blocked on everything, and I avoid them at gatherings. Well, about 2 weeks ago, my mom had a surprise 60th birthday party. One of my aunts was there, and she avoided me like the plague until she needed me to watch her 4-year-old grandson. I'm a teacher and have worked with kids my whole life. The family likes using me as a free babysitter. It was literally the only thing that she has said to me since Tam's passing. I pretended I didn't hear her and continued my conversation with my gram. Later, she tried calling me and found out that she was blocked and gave my mom, gram, and cousins an earful. She cried and played victim. I told them I don't mind being civil with her, but I'm not going out of my way for her anymore. AITA here? NTA. Their treatment of you is domestic violence committed against a family member. It's toxic and abusive. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this mountain of Banfa poodoo, on top of the crushing grief of losing such a wonderful person in your life. Your aunt sounds like an amazing human, and I know that she would want better for you. You deserve all the good things that she always told you. Doing the slideshow must have been very difficult, and it was wrong of people to harass you about it when you did your best to honor Aunt Tam. You did right by her and her memory.
Next story.
When I was a kid, my father and grandfather used to torment me with spiders, catching them on a line web and dangling them in front of my face, putting me in time out in the spider-infested shed, capturing them in a glass and leaving it on my bedside table, making me watch them catch flies and put them in the webs of the wolf spiders in the yard. I have worked on it. I'm now pretty much fine with everyday normal spiders. I still get panicky if they do super awesome things like fall off the ceiling onto the counter in front of me or crawl on the driver's side window of my car, but I no longer get paralyzed by fear and don't stay jumpy for the next few days. I've been dating my girlfriend for a couple of months, and she knows about my arachnophobia. She has been very understanding, and she lives in an old house, and when I've stayed over, I've had a couple of near freakouts after walking into webs in the basement or seeing them on the walls. Yesterday, she invited me to a party, just a small get-together at her friend's house. We walked in, and the host greeted us while wearing a cowboy hat. I said something idiotic like yeehaw. The host laughed and said, "Oh, it's his favorite place to ride. He loves meeting new people." She turned around, and there was a huge tarantula on the back of her hat. 2 of its giant mobile spider legs were raised, and I was out of there. I beat my feet and I sprinted out of the door and down to the end of the driveway. My girlfriend came out after a bit and started yelling at me for being overdramatic. Meanwhile, I'm hyperventilating and feel like I'm about to pass out. She said that the host loves spiders. She keeps them as pets and they won't hurt me. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Asking me to come here when you know full well how I'd react to someone with giant spiders as pets?" She got even more pissed and just told me to get an Uber and said that she couldn't believe how I embarrassed her by acting like a child in front of her friends. It's only been 24 hours, but I can't help but feel that this has set me back. I could barely sleep last night due to nightmares and nearly launched through the roof when my cat brushed against my leg. My girlfriend has been telling her friends that I'm a big baby and that I need to grow up. AITA? Cheers, everyone. I broke up with her this morning. I was planning to do so anyway, but she sent me a picture of a brown recluse, and I did it over text. Really appreciate how kind everyone has been. Made me feel so much better. Got the spider horrors just reading this. I can't be in the same room as a spider. I get shaky, sick to the stomach, and feel like crying. And in Australia, we have some absolutely terrifying giant ones. My husband knows I'm batshit scared of them, and when I do the spider scream, Christmas Day 2012 was particularly memorable. Giant hand-sized huntsman on the shower curtain. Or the time a huntsman crawled across the inside of my car windscreen while driving at night. Ugh. He runs to help. Generally, I can laugh about it a few days later. Your NTA.
Next story.
I have been renting from my landlord for over 4 years. At some point, my wife and I decided to buy a condo. It makes more sense to put the money we put into rent every month towards a home that we can have in our names at the end of it all. I gave my landlord a heads up that we will not be renewing the lease when it ends soon, which is very soon. It's more than enough legal notice, and instead we'll be purchasing a place for ourselves. I made the comment that we may have to stretch out dollars to fully cover the cost of home ownership, but we'll make do. Our landlord took offense to that and basically said, "So you're putting yourself into financial harm and you'll end up screwing me over?" Making comments about how it'll be hard work finding new renters and renos he'd have to do, etc. We kept this place in excellent condition. Made generalized statements about how this is why renting to tenants is so shitty and tougher than minimum wage these days. I was really taken aback. He wasn't the sweetest person in the world, but there was no reason for him to be rude. I told him if being a landlord was worse than minimum wage, then he's free to apply to McDonald's. But I don't see him ever doing that because he knows that's just not true. We told him how it makes no sense to keep renting if we can afford to get our own home. Yeah, sure. With insurance and taxes, it'll be a bit more than the rent, but it still beats paying near the cost of rent every month, but getting nothing in return. And we can afford it. It's not like we'll be the only ones budgeting our pennies in today's economy. And anyways, he's been sending me texts about how I am ungrateful for the home that he's been providing me. I don't know where it's coming from. I pay rent, and if it's not enough, he was always free to evict me and not renew the lease. We have no tenancy protection laws here. Clearly, he preferred having a tenant. Anyways, AITA? NTA, your lease is ending. He has no business telling you what to do. Please don't listen to him. You do what's best for you and your family. Him having issues with renting out the place to new people isn't your problem at all. Go get your home.